folks, welcome back. So here we are, Mickey Bobby, back after a long time. No, we're not on the transmission, but as you can tell, some of these parts here, exhaust parts, we're on to a muffler. I'm not replacing the whole exhaust system, but all I need is the muffler because the tailpipes are just fine. They're not rusted out or anything like that, just your typical tailpipes. Back end right here, the front end that goes into the cat right there. Really the only thing rusted was some bolts that go in here and the exhaust gasket donut that goes in there. You got that guy right there. I replaced the bolts. I got my own bolts with the spring. You'll see that here in a second. I'm gonna put those in. This right here, I'm gonna cut off this big flange right over here. Got me a little cheap $20 exhaust tip to go with the exhaust. What this one is the Flowmaster 50 series, not the Super 50. It's not a V8 or, I don't think it really matters, but I don't think they make a Super 50. But this is a 50 series Flowmaster because I wanted the moderate inside and out. I don't want to wake up my neighbors every time I start my truck up in the morning, but I want some a little bit overstock, and that's what the 50 will give you. I've listened to a bunch of different ones, the 44, the regular Delta 40, and then they got the 10 that's pretty much like not having a muffler at all. And yeah, I wanted to muffle the sound a little bit. So some of this stuff you don't really need, but I just picked these up because these are like $3 a piece and I got them like super cheap. So I went ahead and picked up some extra stuff. It's better than that, making like 100 trips to the store, because these right here, I'm going to need to, since the old muffler that I took off has these welded on here that hook into the exhaust hangers, rubber and the exhaust mount up there. These are the hangers. Instead of cutting these off and reusing them, one, as you can see, it's kind of rusty right here. It looks like it's a few years away from just breaking off of there, so I'm not going to reuse those. You could, but I wouldn't. You might as well just replace them. It's cheap metal. And then what I'm going to do here, they're not the exact same design. Obviously you can see it doesn't have as big of a knob out here, but it has a little hook down. And I'm gonna use that in series with some of these straps. I may have to pick up another one of these, but I'm gonna use it in series with that. I'm gonna use the cement in between where they're gonna join up with the muffler, the old tailpipes right here. We're gonna join up with the muffler. I'm gonna put some cement on there and maybe possibly some epoxy on the outside of it. This will go on the inside after this is sealed up. I may have to use this depending on how well I sealed up the exhaust leaks. And then over top of that, I'm gonna brace it and put the clamp right over top and then cinch it down. And then it should already have its exhaust hangers on here. I'm gonna of course reuse that. It's about, this one is almost exactly the same length as the old muffler. So I shouldn't have too much issue with it being too short and the hangers not lining up. If they don't line up just perfectly, I think I could pretty much figure it out. What I'm gonna start doing is sanding this down so that the cement has something good to, something real good to hold on to. I'm gonna put generous amounts of the cement in between there, not so much to where I get it inside, the muffler, but enough to where I know that seals. It's gonna seal pretty nicely once it fully cures in somewhere between 5 and 24 hours. Usually, in our conditions here, since it's not super humid, it should cure in about 5 hours, but just to be safe, usually you want to give it about 24 hours to cure. Yeah, okay. When all is said and done, and I have that first inlet hooked up to the muffler, and then the compound in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount that up there. Mount this first, then I'm going to have to cement this back portion into the exhaust outlet while it's inside the truck, just because you can't put this whole thing in there, because if you guys have ever done an exhaust, you know that most times you can't just pull a full exhaust straight out of the truck. You're gonna have to cut it, or take the axle down or something like that in order to get that stuff out. So with that being said, that's what I'm looking at today. Without further ado, I'll just go ahead and start doing that. folks, so here we are underneath the truck, obviously. Got it loosely in there. We've got some exhaust hangers on either side. We got this thin little strip of band that I'm getting this mocked up with. Now I'm going to leave this band on here, but I'm going to add some more supports. I mean, I think that this band could hold pretty well, but I think that after, you know, going down the road, vibration and bouncing up and down, eventually that little tiny hole with that bolt is going to pop out of there. But I think the purposes of mocking this up and being able to move it back and forth to line it up properly so I can get the cement to seal, the pipe cement to seal, this will work okay. And I will have replaced those exhaust hangers, as you can see up there, with new ones. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that with, you know, the amount of straps and supports that I'm going to put on this muffler, but I will put some more. As you can see, maybe up there a little bit, there's more than one hole. I've just got it on the bottom hole. I don't know if you guys can see that too well, if I can get the camera steady enough. But there's two more holes that come up here, and I'll be able to maybe attach another strap up there, metal strap, so that I can get this supported more. Obviously, this is not going to be supporting the whole exhaust system. There are other hangers down on the other side, and then it's going to be attached over here. I may actually put some hangers on this side just to support this side as well. But I'm going to tighten up these bolts. They're just in there loose right now. I'll tighten these up and then we'll go from there. Back over here, how y'all doing? Tighten these up. She's still a little wobbly because, as you can see here, we're supporting the weight, so that's what I want it to do for right now. Right here, I got the inlet to the muffler right over here. About to put this exhaust gasket in, so she can sit in there just like that. I got some bolts because I broke the other ones because they're all rusted and seized up. So I took the spring from it, fashioned up some washers and stuff like that, and gonna bolt it in just like that. Just like so. She should work just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then on this other side, once I get the bolts in there loosely, that side we prepped earlier, I'm gonna throw some cement on this side after I'd already sanded it. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm also going to wrap it up with some of this heat wrap tape. I got the tape originally to hook up to tape up the dryer. It's heat tape. One little, like, you don't have to do that. It's just one little extra thing that I'm doing just to make sure that everything stays where it's supposed to. Seals up the exhaust hopefully better, but you ain't got to do that. It's just what I'm doing. But without further ado, I'm gonna start doing that. I'll put you on time lapse. All right, folks. So I went ahead and did a little bit more work on the muffler. Now the tip looks exactly the same because I haven't changed that out yet. But I'll bring you guys underneath because a lot of it was real tight spaces. Wasn't a whole lot of room to do anything. Now you're gonna see this tape here, and it probably looks a little fabulous, but you know, that heat tape has been working just fine. I tested her out last night after the cement underneath the tape had cured. And I'm telling you, this stuff sticks really good. It's like really sticky aluminum foil. That 3M stuff, I'm telling you, it works really good. I've used it in other applications, really high heat, and that thing held there for over, it was over a year. I know it held under constant heat. So this is how I got it mounted up. The bolts are all tightened and everything. So you see me shaking it here. And basically the only thing moving is because it's on the exhaust hangers. But other than that, that thing's in there pretty solid. I mean, over here, it looks like some kind of contraption, but I'm telling you, these things are holding this thing in there nice, and I got some cement underneath it, some of that exhaust cement in between there, and then I tightened her down. And this is just helping reinforce the little joint I got here so it doesn't shake loose later on. And of course, I showed you this earlier, we're supporting most of it. I got these tightened down. You know, this thing ain't moving. And up here I replaced the exhaust gasket, as you can see, and then these are new bolts. I broke the other ones, but I went ahead and replaced those. Just want to get you guys up to speed because I didn't have you under here looking at the whole thing that I did, but that's pretty much what I'd worked on. That down there, this right here, and then the middle strap there, and then new screws with the spring, and then the new donut in there. Everything else I'd already done with the exhaust, but I replaced gaskets all the way from the headers it's up in there, you can't see it, all the way back. So what I'm looking at today is this. What I'm looking at today is this bend in the pipe, and I'm thinking, do I want to just cut it off at the turn here and have it come straight out, or do I want to leave it like that? I think I got the exhaust tip, and I think it would look kind of dumb if I were to have it kicking out, like attached to here and kicking out that way. I think I'm thinking about cutting it here and then having it shoot out right here. I'll give you guys a little bit of a cold start. The new exhaust on here with the new muffler. Alright folks, so all I did here was just change the oil out. If you guys have watched up until now, you guys probably already have seen what this engine looks like, what it looked like when it got put together. As you can see, it's pretty much just like how she went in. I haven't changed out really anything up here, except for the stock replacement. If you can see it down here, that little guy right here with the cam synchronizer, it's got a circle and then a little plastic piece that jets out right there. Alright, so the cam synchronizer lets the computer know where your camshaft is in its rotation so that it can properly time the spark and fuel, or time the spark with the position of the camshaft and subsequently the position of the piston. If that's off, you're going to run inefficiently, but even worse, it could cause pre-combustion and damage to your engine. So I went ahead, there's a process when you're hooking this thing up, and I wanted to explain it a little bit better. Now bear with me, I know it's dark, but I'm working with this flashlight right now. Here's the old cam synchronizer right here. I just got her laid in some oil just because it's easier. So as you can see, it's got that little toothed gear down here on the bottom right there. That's what links in with the gear that looks just like that on the camshaft. On the camshaft, there's a gear that looks just like this one right here. So it'll turn that, but it also hooks up right here. As you can see, it's kind of like a octagon shape, or a hexagon. I think it's octagon, where that links into the oil pump. So you got to make sure this thing's in there and bolted in, because if you don't, you're not going to have any oil pressure and you're going to destroy your engine pretty dang quick. Also, there's a process to this when you're putting it in. You don't just take the old one out and put the new one in. Different models of car, vehicles, when you put it in, it has to be facing a certain degree. For this particular truck, it's 37 degrees off the center line of the engine. And you're like, what does that mean? Well, you know what the center is, right? So the center line, pretty much, right? That's the center. Let's just say that's the center line. That means that 37 degrees to the left, I need to be facing that way. Yeah? Or to the right, that way. As you notice down here, it's canted, as you can see right there, it's canted off about 37 degrees. Now how I do that at first, before I just pop it in there, the first thing you got to do, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this engine off so you guys can hear me a little bit better. Okay, just had to turn that engine off so I don't have to yell. So it's a little bit of a process, but it's not that hard, okay? You're gonna locate your number one cylinder. In this case, for me, this is the number one cylinder, right where this spark plug is. I'm gonna take this spark plug wire out because that's the number one cylinder. I've already done this, so I'm just kind of walking you through. I'm gonna pop that out. I'm gonna pop out the number one spark plug, okay? If you don't know what the number one cylinder is in your engine, just look at your engine. There'll be, one of the sides will be a little bit further to the front of the vehicle than the other side. The side of cylinders that's closest to you, that's that first one, that first cylinder is, or that closest one to you is going to be the first cylinder. The reason why this one over here is not the first cylinder, because this set, as you can see, this set of, well, you can't really see that. Anyway, it's further back. You can see down there where the blue is, the valve cover is back a little bit further than this valve cover. If you can see the blue down there, well, some of the stuff's in the way. Anyway, so you're gonna pop that number one, spark plug out, and then the reason why you're doing that is because you want to, I'm gonna put my, or what I did was I put my finger in the hole, and then I got underneath the vehicle down here, and underneath there, right behind, so here's the fan. You can see it right there a little bit. Right here in the middle is the bolt, which is the crankshaft pulley bolt, okay? Mine's 13/16 deep well socket. I got either, some people use a breaker bar or a ratchet, whichever one's easier for you. Some people get underneath the vehicle, but I'm gonna tell you, if you're working by yourself, it's gonna be hard to put your finger in, like, slightly on the tip of that hole where the spark plug is, and turn this at the same time. Because what you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have your finger on the hole, turn this crankshaft pulley clockwise, not counterclockwise, but clockwise, until you feel the air pushing out on your finger that's in the spark plug hole. Not sucking your finger in but pushing it out, like you can feel air pushing out. When that happens, when you first feel that air push out, that means that the number one piston is on the compression stroke. Once you have that, on the dampener here, there's little notches. You gotta really like look. Sometimes you can put some oil on there and you'll see it. Mine, you can't see it here, but there's a mark on here with like pink paint marker that signifies top dead center. Okay, now what you want to do, once you're on the compression stroke of number one cylinder, you then want to turn this crankshaft clockwise until this dampener, there's a line or top dead center mark on here, lines up with, okay, so if you guys can see that dampener, this big plastic thing right here in front, the crankshaft position sensor. Right here where my thumbnail is, it's like a wedge that pokes out of the water pump housing. That is your timing mark that you're lining the top dead center mark that's on the dampener. You're lining it up with that little notch that's poking out. And on this 2003 Ford Ranger, it happens to be right next to and behind the crankshaft position sensor. So once you got that lined up, then you can go up top. So once you got that top dead center, on mine it's a pink mark, but likely yours isn't going to have a pink mark unless you already painted it or somebody else painted it with a paint marker. It's a very faint line, and you have to get up in here and use a flashlight and look for that top dead center. It'll say TDC. And then once your number one, again, just to recap, once the number one piston is on its compression stroke by putting your finger in the spark plug hole and turning the crankshaft pulley until you feel air push out. Once it's on the compression stroke, you line up the TDC mark with the timing mark that I just showed you right next to the crankshaft position sensor. Once you got that, then you can put the camshaft synchronizer in. Now, I've already got the new one in. This is the old one. But basically, I would take this, and then I have a tool. See these two bolts? You're gonna take these two bolts off. Pop it. All this is a dust cap. You just pop that off, and there'll be a ring dial right here, and there'll be inside of that dial there'll be a little metal piece that you can move left and right, or you can move it all the way 360 around in there. So what that plastic tool is basically a cap that you put on there, and it holds that little wedge in place. Now for this particular truck, the wedge needs to be facing completely out this way, the same direction as this right here. That means that when you're putting it in, it needs to move like that. This little wedge doesn't need to be like moving over to this side when you're putting it in there, because that can happen if you don't have that tool on there. So you want to position it holding the tool, pushing it into, you're going to be pushing it into the hole in the back of the block to where, and you're going to be trying to find the oil pump shaft and the actual gear that fits on the camshaft, you know, the gear that matches up to that gear right there as you're pushing it in, and then it'll clip in there. And do not forget, there is a bolt that holds this into place, one 10mm bolt on this truck that'll hold this into place. If you do not put that bolt back in there, I'm telling you, you're going to start your vehicle up, and you may not notice it at first, but this thing's going to pop out of there and just sit there in your engine, but you're not going to have any oil pressure because the oil pump shaft is not going to be pushed through this hole right here. It's not going to be linked up to the camshaft synchronizer, so it's not going to turn the oil pump. And it's just a matter of minutes before your engine just seizes up. And you're probably going to smell some nasty burnt stuff that you never smelled before in your life. All right. So if I don't impress anything else upon you, you want to make sure you got that mount bolt in there. Make sure that the camshaft synchronizer is sitting there in place just so. Don't forget to put that bolt in, right? I ran through with the camshaft synchronizer, but there's like a million videos on YouTube. You could, if you need to, you can always go and check that out. these different videos, because they do like a real in-depth and show it while you're doing it. But for all intents and purposes of, you know, my schedule between school and doing this on the truck and everything, I had to get her done, and I'll show you guys what I did. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions or anything like that, don't forget to put those down in the comment section. I do answer those. I do see when people, you know, request to see certain things. I try to appease them, you know, if all the stars and moons align correctly. If you got any suggestions, anything you want to see in the next videos, don't forget to put that in the comments as well. But until then, we'll see you on the next one.